Namaste and welcome to another interesting discussion with Dr. Raja Bhaumik, a practicing doctor and also a historian with his book, Journey to India's Freedom, An Untold Story. So in the last episode, we did speak about why he wrote this book. We spoke about how the British eventually came in, how the Congress Party was formed, how there was partly a moderate non-violent movement, but there were also revolutionaries who should be given their due share, but they have not so in the India's history books. So in today's discussion, we will talk a little more about what after the partition, what after India got independence, the accession part, J&K, Hyderabad. So let's welcome Dr. Raja Bhaumik. Namaste ji.
Namaste. Jai Hind.
So we had a very interesting discussion in the last episode. So in this episode, I would want to specifically talk about a few chapters of your book, where you mentioned about the things that led to the accession, the different accession of the princely states into India. Then there were also the topics of what's happened in J&K and Hyderabad. So to start off, maybe I would like to have a basic introduction on how did this discussion of accession actually begin? Was it an easy process? Was Patel the sole person who ran it through, or were there other people also playing an important part in the accession?
So British India was divided into two parts. The entire of the British Empire in India was divided into two parts. One is the provinces in which the British, through the Viceroy, was in charge of a direct administration of that particular province, and the other one were the princely states, in which the Viceroy was acting as a representative of the British Crown.
Right.
But the administration was run by the prince of that particular state. Now, in the princely states, the administration was on two levels. One was external policies or the foreign policies, which were directly under the control of the British Crown. And secondly was the internal administration, which was under the control of the ruler, but at the same time it was governed by a British who used to be a resident in the state.
Right.
So this particular resident in the state could intervene at any point of time when he felt that the prince was going against the interests of the British.
Right.
So therefore this was the type of an administrative setup.
Right.
Now, the princely states were also guaranteed the power of paramountcy.
Right.
So, in that particular paramountcy, it was clearly mentioned that it is the responsibility of the crown to look after certain aspects of the administration. For example, communication, external policies, and also the defense.
Right.
While the prince used to look after the other aspects.
Right.
When on 4th of June 1947, Lord Mountbatten, he came out with that particular policy on the basis of which British India was to become free. There were two important things that one has to understand. Number one, he announced planned partition. Through planned partition, all the provinces of British India were to be divided between Hindustan and Pakistan.
Right.
Hindustan, it did ultimately come to be known as India because of certain diplomatic issues. But the next important thing that was left unaddressed to was the princely states.
Right.
The princely state, from the time that Lord Mountbatten announced that the transfer of power will take place on August 15, 1947, it was also made very clear that the paramountcy would lapse on that day. As a result of which, the princely states would then have the power to decide whether to accede to the dominion of India, whether to accede to the dominion of Pakistan, or remain independent.
Right.
Majority of the princely states, because they were very small, they for one decided that independence could not be a feature because they could not even protect themselves.
Correct.
So therefore, the only way out rather for them was either to accede to dominion of India or to the dominion of Pakistan.
Right.
For this, the instrument of accession came into play.
Right.
So the instrument of accession, it only revolved around two or three important things. The first important thing was the contiguity. That is, whether it is sharing a boundary with the dominion of India or with the dominion of Pakistan.
Right.
So if it is sharing, because since majority of the princely states were within the dominion of India, so therefore it was axiomatic that majority of them would actually align with the dominion of India.
Right.
Very few of the princely states were within the boundaries of the dominion of Pakistan.
Right.
So therefore, they automatically became that. The second category was the religion. On that basis, it was decided that, for example, if the majority of the subjects follow a religion different from that of the ruler, then in that case there should be a plebiscite.
Like as in the case of
Jammu Kashmir,
Junagadh.
right?
Yeah.
So in not only that, even in Hyderabad.
Correct. Yeah.
In fact, these are the three princely states which did not accede to the dominion of India on the 15th of August 1947, in spite of the fact that the religion of their ruler was different from the religion of their subjects. So in case of Junagadh and also, for example, in Hyderabad, the religion of majority of the subjects were Hinduism. Whereas in Kashmir, the religion of the king, that is Maharaja Hari Singh, was different from that of his subjects.
Correct.
Now, Mr. Jinnah, at that point in time, he decided that he must play the game of convenience.
Right.
So when it came to Hyderabad and Junagadh, his line of argument was that it is the religion of the ruler that should predominate, not that of the subjects.
Right.
So as a result of which, he offered to the Prince of Junagadh, who was a Muslim, that you should join Pakistan. And this was done through the mediation of Mr. Shahnawaz Bhutto, who was the grandfather of Benazir Bhutto. This particular thing did not apply to the princely state of Kashmir.
Right.
In the princely state of Kashmir, he told that because Kashmir, the majority of the subjects in Kashmir are Muslims, and Kashmir also shares a sort of a boundary with Pakistan, so it is but natural that Kashmir should be a part of Pakistan. That was his line of argument.
So when it comes to Kashmir and Hyderabad and Junagadh, like Kashmir has always been a boiling topic. A lot of lives have been lost. So seeds, of course, was it actually sown in 1947 during the partition time, or do you think the Kashmir issue actually started much earlier?
See, the Kashmir issue has got a significant element in the sense that the British always wanted Kashmir to be a part of Pakistan.
Is it because the trade routes between India and Central Asia should be cut off, or is there any other reason?
No, the reason was that at that time, that was because this happened just after the World War II ended.
Right.
And the Russians, they were very much aware of the fact that the Western ally, that is US and UK put together, they were having their own nuclear program. In the Xinjiang province, significant deposits of uranium were discovered. And the Russians were now, through their mining activities, extracting this uranium and sending it to the present-day Tajikistan and Kazakhstan to develop their own nuclear program.
Right.
When the British came to know of this thing, then they decided to set up some degree of reconnaissance in the northern areas, extreme northern areas of Kashmir. That is the present-day Gilgit and Baltistan.
Right.
Along with flights which were taking off from air bases both near Rawalpindi as well as in Northwest Frontier Province. The British realized that once Jammu and Kashmir, it becomes a part of the dominion of India, this sort of spying activities will certainly come to an end, which will be a severe setback for their own nuclear program. So British from the very beginning were of the opinion that Kashmir should be a part of Pakistan. And how that was, and it was based on the fact that the majority of the subjects in Kashmir were Muslims, and Kashmir was sharing a boundary with Pakistan. So that was their rationale.
Okay. So it's a little known fact. Most of us know that tribals from Pakistan or tribals from Kashmir revolted against India and kind of took Gilgit, Baltistan, all of that away from India. That's what is commonly said. But then you also mentioned in your book about Operation Datta Khel, where Major General Brown, I believe, right? So a British officer was involved in instigating a mob of Gilgit people to fight and revolt and come out of Kashmir. So what is there anything else you can elucidate more about this incident on how JNK lost Gilgit Baltistan from JNK?
See, Gilgit and Baltistan were always separated, if I may use the word, were always separated from the rest of Jammu and Kashmir. They were seen as part of the extreme northern territory.
Right.
And this extreme northern territory was basically utilized by the British to keep an eye on the Soviet nuclear program. Part of Gilgit rather, was ceded by Maharaja Hari Singh to the British.
Right.
Now, in order to prevent a deadlock, Lord Mountbatten issued instructions that this part of the Gilgit, which was being administered by the British, should be handed over to the Maharaja by somewhere around the 1st of August 1947. On paper, therefore, the entire area of Gilgit and Baltistan now comes under Maharaja Hari Singh. And Maharaja Hari Singh at that time, he was not very clear whether he is going to accede to India, to Pakistan, or remain independent.
Right.
Although he was always in favor of an independence of Kashmir because he wanted to expand the Dogra kingdom.
Right.
When, for example, this particular influx of the tribals, they started taking place. Okay, at that point in time, it was very clear that the Pakistanis, they were, with the help of the Britishers, with the help of the British army men, were actually trying to get control of this part of Kashmir, including the northern areas as well as the Kashmir plains. Now, when the Kashmir issue was taken up in the UN, the British, they adopted that particular approach that this is a communal issue. The forces of Maharaja Hari Singh are actually tormenting the Muslims of Kashmir, as a result of which the various tribes from across the border had actually infiltrated into the state. But this was completely opposed by the Americans. The Americans were of the opinion that Kashmir has infiltrated into that part of the state which is now an integral part of India. Why is it an integral part of India? Because the accession was ratified by the Governor General of the Dominion of India, that is Lord Mountbatten.
Right.
So therefore, there was a dichotomy between the approach of the US and the UK with regards to the position of Kashmir when the Kashmir issue was raised at the UN. That was one of the things. Now, when it comes to Major Brown, now at that time what happened is that at that time when the entire area came under the control of the Indians, the British decided that something has to be done to wrest this area from them.
Right.
So Major Brown was deputed and he led a group of tribal forces who were mostly Muslims to ultimately threaten the governor of that part of Kashmir that either he should surrender or he should face an armed rebellion. So when initially his forces, that is the forces of the governor, they tried to fight the rebels, after some time they were overpowered.
Right.
And then subsequently the surrender took place.
Right.
And when the surrender took place, General Brown, who after 1 or 2 days handed over the power to a Pakistani official, he went back to Rawalpindi, and surprisingly, and you will be surprised to know that Major Brown was in course of time, he was awarded a degree for basically safeguarding the interests of the British Empire. So now this becomes very clearly, it is for each of us now to realize that the British did play a very dirty game in Jammu Kashmir.
I mean, so can we actually say this is a very common trend everywhere, like when it comes to perhaps North Korea or South Korea, when it comes to India and Pakistan, or many of these places, do you think there's a more geopolitical kind of a thing going on rather than local politics, which is actually creating some, rifts like these, which are leading to a lot of loss of lives? So do you think that's actually happening?
Yeah, it is certainly happening. It is certainly happening. And this you can very well see in the way, for example, this a Palestinian conflict.
Correct. Israel-Palestine. Also by the British, owned by the British.
It was settled by the British during the course of the World War I and subsequently. This particular attitude of the British has given rise to a lot of international rivalry.
But why do you think, it is not in mainstream history books, talking about these kind of facts that, the British was potentially involved. And it is for British interests that, we lost POK. And similarly, there's some people also say that, the mystery behind Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose ji's disappearance or so-called death there was a British hand behind it is also what is said there. Why are these things being classified, kept hidden, not coming out in mainstream?
Because history is always written by the victors.
Right. So then technically the independence of India, was it still a victory of the British?
Yes, in a way, yes, because they certainly achieved their interest. Because on the day that the victory in Europe was announced,
Right.
that is on 8th of May 1945. Okay, the moment it became very clear that the war in Europe is over for the good,
Right.
Mr. Churchill instructed his post-hostilities reorganization committee to actually let London know what was to be done with British India.
Mm.
And within a few days, these people came back with the report that it was essential for the British to ensure the partition of British India.
Mm.
The reason is that it was very clear that Mr. Jinnah would be in charge of Pakistan.
Mm.
And during the course of World War II, there was a tacit understanding between Mr. Jinnah and Mr. Churchill that the Muslim League will support the British or the Allied initiatives in the World War in exchange of, number one, recruitment of more number of Muslim young men into the Allied forces, and number two, to ensure that the principle of Pakistan is honored.
Mm.
So as a result of which and also that Pakistan will become a member of the Commonwealth.
Mm.
So these three things were ultimately decided between the two leaders.
Right.
And therefore London was always comfortable with the fact that British India has to be divided into two parts. In fact, you will be surprised, by March 1945, during a meeting with Lord Wavell, Mr. Churchill had proposed that British India should be divided into three parts:
Mm.
Hindustan, Pakistan and Princetown.
And what's the third one?
Princetown. That is, the Princetown would actually comprise of the various princely states.
Okay, so it's all a fragmented nation without
Yes.
proper boundaries.
So it will be like, for example, a cancerous, just like Sardar Patel told, that this will be like a cancerous tissue on India's back. And one of the reasons why Mr. Churchill agreed to that was because Mr. Jinnah, he was not satisfied with the shape, with the moth-eaten Pakistan that he was being offered.
Mm.
Because Lord Wavell, he was of the opinion that it is important to ensure that in the dominion of Pakistan, the non-Muslims are not forced to stay back against their wishes.
Mm.
So which meant that Punjab and Bengal, which had a significant non-Muslim population, also therefore had to undergo some sort of reorganization so that this group of people could all be resettled in a peaceful manner.
Right.
And unknown to all of us, Mr. Jinnah was always in favor of exchange of population.
Right.
He made it very clear that in order to ensure that partition doesn't involve a lot of bloodshed, it is important that there should be exchange of population.
Right.
But for some reason whatsoever, the Indian National Congress at that time did not agree to that. And we all know what happened.
Correct.
So therefore, partition was a decided factor in 1945, August 1945. That is almost 2 hours before before the transfer of power actually took place.
Mm.
The transfer of power took place in August 1947, while by August 1945, it was quite decided that British India will be partitioned on communal lines into the dominion of Pakistan and the dominion of India.
Right. So as a final question, now we all know what's happened in J&K and Junagadh and Hyderabad. What do you think went right with Hyderabad, as opposed to Jammu and Kashmir, where Hyderabad eventually today is an integrated part of the Republic of India? So what went right over here?
See, we must thank Sardar Patel and Mr. V.P. Menon, who from the very outset was very clear that both Junagadh and Hyderabad should be an integral part of India. Jammu Kashmir, initially, Sardar Patel was ready that Jammu Kashmir becomes a part of Pakistan. Number one, because it shared a boundary with Pakistan. Number two, because the majority of the population were Muslims. But after he saw the attitude of Mr. Jinnah, especially with regards to Junagadh and Hyderabad, where in spite of the fact that neither Junagadh or Hyderabad shared a boundary with Pakistan, and majority of their subjects were Hindus, Mr. Sardar Patel decided that Kashmir rightfully belongs to India. So it was from that time onwards that he started putting in place moves which would ensure that Kashmir would come to India. But the person who came in, there were two people who came in between that. One was Mr. Nehru and the other was Lord Mountbatten. It was because of them that the Kashmir issue was ultimately referred to the UN, much to the disappointment of Sardar Patel, who had always kept advising Mr. Nehru that once you refer any of these disputed areas to, for example, an international body like the UN, India will never have its say. And that is ultimately what has happened with Jammu and Kashmir.
Right. Great, Ji. Thank you so much for this episode. We'll catch up again on another episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jai Hind.
So you heard what all Dr. Raja Bhaumik had to say about the accession part, Jammu and Kashmir part and all of that. Let us catch up on the next episode once again. Namaste and Jai Hind.